coming to you from deep beneath the murky waters that lie beyond the Lake Erie shoreline. This is the Cleveland Podcast! With Fred the Mud Monster and South Bay Caesar. Find us online at facebook.com/The Cleveland Podcast or email us at theclevelandpodcast@gmail.com. Now, join us as we journey through Northeast Ohio and the city of Cleveland.
Hey, Fred.
What's up, Caesar? You like salad?
I can neither confirm nor deny that I, Caesar, like Caesar salad.
We should make that a t-shirt.
We will.
There we go.
We should make some Cleveland Podcast t-shirts.
I've been wondering who's been trying to do that.
Remember how the other day I wished for a cow and an earthquake?
Yeah, that's right.
I think we recorded that on the 9th.
I think so, yeah.
And on the 10th,
rumble!
Northeast Ohio got its earthquake.
Which is really kind of disappointing. I was sitting in my bed, and at first, I'm sitting there just thinking, is my stomach really growling right now? But everything's shaking, something, it's got to be the laundry. And lo and behold, I'm like, no, this is probably an earthquake. Earthquakes and I have been a very unique relationship, in part because being a mud monster, it makes it easy to not feel the impacts of the earthquake. Everything just jiggles and there's no sustainable damage.
I assumed you'd be like laying in the mud.
Exactly. I even slept through an earthquake once. I was really young. It was my dad and I, the senior mud monster, and we were just laying there, and my mother was trying to wake us up, both of us up. Oh, wake up! This is in California, where the earthquakes we know are for real.
Right.
They're dangerous, and we're just going, forget it. Yeah, I think I was about 3 at the time.
On the grand scale of earthquakes, this wasn't enough to really be all that interesting.
Right.
It was really only interesting from the fact that we wished for it, I wished for it, and the next day we got it. So it was a 4.0, maybe 4.2 on the Richter scale. Isn't enough to do any damage.
Right.
It might knock your picture.
Right, knock your picture
off the wall or off
a little bit
off your shelf.
It didn't even do that for my pictures because I have a couple of things framed, like awards and stuff, from all my public speaking, and then nothing, that didn't even fall off. I just thought my laundry was going haywire. That's all I thought it was. And then everyone's going, "Are you okay?" And then a relative of mine messaged me and said, "Oh, are you okay? Are you okay? We heard about the earthquake. Is everything all right?" I'm going, "Oh, I'm fine. I was just asleep."
So there were a couple of aftershocks.
I didn't even know there were aftershocks.
I think they were in the 2-point-something range.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that you really can't feel that. So the only one that people really felt was the 4.0 or the 4.0 or the 4.2. And that was centered somewhere north of East Lake, in Lake Erie. So some of the things they talked about after that was that they wanted to make sure that the nuclear power plant was okay.
Oh, of course. That's a big concern.
I didn't really think about that before.
Yeah, right.
I didn't realize that we lived near a fault zone. Not a bad one, but it is a fault zone.
All the same, yeah.
And also a nuclear power plant.
Right. I actually want to ask you, Caesar, do you know how earthquakes are caused?
One level of earth going over another?
Yes, but what's the exact term?
Crusty? Crusty?
Crusty.
No.
When the crust, it's called tectonic plates, and there's like a series of these. It's huge. I mean, these are massive things. They're way bigger than the continents, and pretty much we look at the ocean, and people think, oh, it's just the ocean floor, but people don't realize the ocean floor actually moves. And so what happens is when there is friction and when the plates technically collide in some shape or form, it causes tremors because it's two humongous masses of rock coming together and leads into that type of earthquake. And California sits on places where the plates kind of clash a lot. And so that's why you get these big, massive earthquakes. And that's how actually tsunamis occur. quite a
Right.
few, because look at the Indonesian tsunami. The earthquakes cause these huge rises in the waves, and it can lead to a lot of destruction, obviously. So in the end, we're lucky that we're on a not so active fault line, but also the tectonic plates continue to grow, because you ever hear about like the Ring of Fire? The Ring of
in the Pacific.
Yeah, with all the volcanoes and stuff, right? So there's a humongous set of volcanoes at the bottom of the Atlantic and the Pacific, and the lava comes out, and then it immediately starts to cool down because, well, it's seawater, duh. And we get the rock kind of forming, and it slowly pushes the tectonic plates further and makes them grow.
What floor, what apartment floor do you live on?
I am on the second floor.
The second floor? Okay. Apparently, if you're on the top of a building, you can feel an earthquake a lot more than you could on the lower floor of a building.
Well, that makes sense, because the foundation's at the bottom, yeah.
Right. And it sways more at the
Right.
top. Did you ever see the video of that Japan earthquake in 2011?
No, but that is scary, though, because the nuclear reactor did crack.
Right.
I mean, that was scary. I think Fukushima still has quite a few areas that are deserted, and they literally say, don't go to Fukushima. That was pretty much the millennials' version of Chernobyl, almost.
If you've never seen the videos, it's something worth looking at. There was one video where the street cracks in half, and it probably opens up about a foot wide,
Really?
and then goes back together.
Oh my
And then
God.
falls back apart, and people are just looking at it and just in amazement that this. Like, could you imagine if you accidentally got your foot stuck in that little hole and the earth shut on you?
No more Fred the Mud Monster.
Right.
Oh,
Well,
dear.
no foot.
Yeah, no foot. I'd be fine otherwise.
And then one of the other things with those videos is you could see the building swaying, and it's incredible. At the top, you just see one building swaying in one direction and another swaying in the other direction, and it's just unnerving to watch.
That is really disturbing. I mean, I saw some of the images for the San Fran earthquake. That was like in the 90s. Camera turns off, and they go to the scene of the bridge being broken, and you're just like, holy moly, like, that's scary. Well, also, fun fact about the San Fran Bridge: it might be represented in one of the GTA games, Grand Theft Auto. In Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, in the mock town of San Fierro, obviously parodying San Francisco. You can actually see like a broken bridge in the game that references the earthquake, and also you can see the fault lines if you dive deep into the ocean.
I would never want to be on a bridge when it just completely falls.
Yeah, who would?
Like the one in Minnesota, in Minneapolis.
Oh,
St.
that's
Paul.
right. Yeah.
You see the image, and it falls a lot faster than you think it would.
just snaps.
like you think you'd have a moment to understand. Oh no, the bridge is falling, but it's not like that. It falls so fast. You're
Right.
just at the bottom in seconds.
It's not like London Bridge is falling down. It's more like London.
Smack.
Right. No more singing. Ugh. But we're lucky. Only a 4.0. But supposedly California is expecting the big one, though, a 10.0. That's supposedly supposed to be cataclysmic.
Could there be a tsunami on Lake Erie?
I don't know. Maybe. If it's big enough, I'm pretty sure. Who knows?
And that 2011 one at Fukushima, there was a big tsunami there too.
Right, and that took out so much of the towns and city nearby on the coast.
So I wished for a cow and an earthquake so I could get my milkshake.
Yeah.
And I got the earthquake, but I didn't get the cow.
Oh, yeah, I know. Disappointing.
So this week I'm going to wish for a cow and $1 million.
A cow and $1 million? Oh, is there any pun with that? I don't think so. I guess you could say there's a lot of moolah.
Oh, no.
Yes, I got it. A lot of maneuvering to get to that cash.
So we are not a current events podcast. Whoa.
Yeah, we're talking about this 20 days later. As we go, everyone goes, you see the T-shirts of like, we survived the Cleveland earthquake. We go a couple days later, oh, let's talk about it after everything is done.
Right.
But you saw the memes of like the chair that fell over and said, I survived the Cleveland earthquake.
Yeah.
It's just an example. Now, of course, to all the people who have suffered through a real earthquake, this is no laughing matter.
Mildred Smith of Eastlake lost a very important photo that was laying on her
Oh, yeah?
counter and fell off.
Really? What was
Yeah.
the picture of?
Her grandma.
Oh,
Her
now,
late grandma.
oh, gee. Now that's unfortunate.
It broke everywhere.
No.
Anyways, we're not a current events podcast, but
Unless we're talking about the weather.
did you see that there's a story that the governor of Ohio passed a gas tax increase?
Yeah, I saw that.
It's going to raise it by like 10 cents per gallon.
Which actually is a substantial amount when you think about it.
10.5 cents per gallon, which is a lot. It's going to affect a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
Gas was already going up anyway. I think I looked today and it was at a $2.75 per gallon.
I remember traveling to California, and this is at the height of the recession. So this is like 2008, 2009. I remember I saw signs for gas, $5.75 per gallon.
Right.
I mean, don't get me wrong, $2 and change is not too bad, but that's still increasing it by 10 cents, and people were horribly complaining about when it got to the $3s and the $4s and the $5, and now we're seeing that increase again, but due to various different international issues with oil.
So Republican Governor Mike DeWine passed the bill to allow this to happen. I'm surprised that a Republican did this.
I could see it because oil is a really big part of the foundation of America.
Right, but he's taxing oil.
True, but again, DeWine is in a purple state, right? In a purple state, you need to do some things that are kind of more, let's just say, democratic. Like, for instance, in my home state of Maryland, right, we have the governor, Hogan. And Hogan was a Republican who won in a shock election. And basically, of course, Maryland's a very, very blue state. So it's a really complicated matter. How can you can you enact the policies of a full Republican when you live in a very blue state? So for Hogan, it's been a lot more moderate types of approaches in terms of his policies. And he even hasn't fully backed Trump yet. Or at least he's been very quiet about it because he knows that it will cause turmoil within the state of Maryland. So he keeps things very quiet.
Diesel fuel will increase by 19 cents per gallon.
19 cents?
Yeah, that's going to affect a lot of people.
Oh, my God. I mean, people can barely afford that. People can barely afford the gas now.
On the bright side, the money goes towards improving the state's roads and bridges.
Right, which is a concern.
50% of it's going to go to state projects, and 50% is going to go to local governments.
Which is great.
Great for Cleveland, right?
Oh, yeah, Cuyahoga County.
And it's supposed to bring in $865 million per year.
Really? 865? Can I get a slice of that, please? I think I want a little bit of gas.
Well, I did wish for $1 million in an earthquake.
Well, now we're getting 865.
Oh, no, I should have wished for $865 million in an earthquake.
In an earthquake. Oh, jeez.
Now I feel like Dr. Evil.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's kind of weird. You know, you can win that much, though. You ever see, like, the mega millionaire lotteries that happen across the country?
Could you imagine?
300 million. But the thing is, like, a third of that goes to taxes. So
I think half of it goes.
Or half of it, something monstrous. So you're really getting like 150, which still is ridiculous. But even then, there are people worth way more than that. I mean, think about it. LeBron James gets $1 billion contract with Nike, and he's going to be set for life. Michael Jordan is close to $1 billionaire, and Dr. Dre is worth like 800-something million, or something in that range, like the 600 to the 800 million. You just think about it. That's monstrous amounts of money. But supposedly, though, John D. Rockefeller was worth over $100 billion in his day when he was running the oil industry. Going back to oil.
If you had that much money, you could buy a mansion.
A mansion, yes.
Have you ever accidentally bought a mansion for $1,500?
Well, I once bought a toy mansion for $44. That counts.
A toy mansion.
A toy. It was a good one, though. I lasted a good 2-3 years. That was good.
Well, Rosalind Lyons of Cleveland did purchase a mansion by accident.
How do you do that by accident?
By accident. This is a fascinating story.
Okay.
I had to find out about it. One day I was traveling through an eastern neighborhood of Cleveland. And it was a really, really rough neighborhood. And I came upon this mansion on a hill. I had to stop and look and see, what is this? It was dilapidated. There was trash all over the yard. There was, broken windows.
Right.
And the building was just kind of falling apart. But when I looked around, I noticed that the mansion overlooked downtown Cleveland. And it also overlooked Case Western University to the right. I had to find out, like, what's the story with this? So I went home and I Googled it, and I found out that it was the mansion of Levi Schofield.
Oh, I've heard that name.
Yeah, but it was lying in ruins in one of the worst neighborhoods in Cleveland.
Right.
Abandoned. So I had to find out what it was about. So I found out Levi Schofield was born in 1842. He was a third-generation Clevelander. Both his father and his grandfather were carpenters in the city.
Oh, okay.
And they helped to build Cleveland in its early days.
What's Levi Schofield known for? I really think I know that name from somewhere.
Well, in Public Square, there's a statue. Public Square, like right downtown.
Oh, that might be it. Okay.
It's the Soldiers and Sailors Monument.
Yeah.
He designed that. And
That's it.
And had that built.
Yeah, okay. That's where I can hear that name from. God, that's been 4 years since I remember that fact.
And also, if you go to the corner of East 9th and Euclid Avenue, you'll find a building called the Schofield Building, and it has a lot of different names. It's had a lot of different names.
Right.
And I think right now it's a hotel and a residence. So he's a well-known architect in the city, and he was friends with Rockefeller. He would go golfing with Rockefeller.
Well, that's a little bit awkward and amazing.
Why awkward?
Well, I have to think that Rockefeller goes, well, you know, Mr. Schofield, I just bought out another business. And Mr. Schofield goes, oh, that's great. How'd you do it? Well, I kind of basically threatened their whole existence in order to do it, because John D. Rockefeller is known for underhanded tactics.
Really?
Oh, to acquire businesses? Oh, yes, this is a whole thing. This is where we get so many laws with business, because the likes of Rockefeller and the really big three like J.P. Morgan and Carnegie, they had different methods of acquiring businesses, but they would do some really shady things, they would intentionally hurt the business in order to then force the people to acquire it. And sometimes I even heard that it would be even threatening people in order to acquire the business. So this is like strong arming. And so this is why you have something like these laws that try and break up these monopolies, like U.S. Steel and obviously Standard Oil. We have these different companies that all come from these humongous companies that were at one time owned by just 3 people.
Schofield designed a lot of the mansions on Millionaire's Row. And one other thing that he designed was the Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio. Are you familiar with that? Have you seen the movie Shawshank Redemption?
I've heard of it, but I'm afraid I'm not that well versed in movie culture.
Me either. I don't watch a lot of movies either.
Yeah, kind of odd.
We're not 2 movie people. We're 2 people who do podcasts.
Right. We listen to podcasts. We don't got time for movies. Why do I care about Morgan Freeman? Who's that?
Anyways, Shawshank Redemption was a pretty famous movie, I think, in the 90s. It was filmed in Mansfield, Ohio, at the State Reformatory, Ohio.
Oh, I did not know that.
And that was designed by Schofield, too.
Oh, interesting.
So he was an interesting guy. And he decided he wanted to move out into the country. He lived downtown.
Right.
What we would consider downtown today.
Right.
And he wanted to move out into the country, what we would consider East Cleveland. Like, not East Cleveland, the city, but like the east side of Cleveland. And so he found 6 acres, I think, on a hill overlooking the city, overlooking downtown, overlooking Case Western University, and he built a mansion there. It was a 3-story stone Victorian house, 6,000 square feet, and he lived in it from I think it was built in 1898, and then he lived in it till he died in 1917. And his family stayed in the mansion until 1925. In 1925, they sold it to the Catholic diocese, and it was a chapel and a convent.
Really? That's interesting.
And then in 1955, they made it into a nursing home. And in 1990, the nursing home closed.
Wow, that's why it became dilapidated.
At which point, it started falling apart.
I
mean, this is in a really, really rough neighborhood. It's the kind of neighborhood that people don't want to really go to unless there's a reason to be there.
Right.
This is actually the conversation I think I talked about in one of the earlier episodes, where somebody who lives in that neighborhood might be frustrated that we're talking about it like it's a difficult neighborhood to live in.
Well, I think there's any neighborhood has pros and cons. But at the same time, though, thinking about the fact that East Cleveland's definitely on the come up for sure. Like I was talking to someone yesterday when I was traveling to a birthday party for a friend, and the Uber driver goes, "I definitely want to buy a property in East Cleveland." And I go, "Oh, why?" Thinking like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." There are parts of East Cleveland that are really nice actually now. Like right around the top of the hill, like with the Owl Nest apartments. That's a nice part of town. And he's like, "Well, the prices are falling, and so it's a good opportunity to buy properties and then hold on to them, because it seems like the plan is you keep letting the value decrease to the point that now becomes just land that you can build upon, and then suddenly it'll just explode." It's kind of similar to how Case was done, because people will tell you all the time that Case at one point was an area that was just a factory, like a factory part of town. I mean, where the CIA building is now, where there's a library and exhibits, was a factory. And so they would just let it kind of fall apart, these developers, which is very shady, but I guess they just wanted to tear it down and then redevelop it. And so I think that's what's happening with East Cleveland. At least is what the Uber driver told me. And of course, there's many pros and cons to that, but we're going to see how long that will take and whether this is actually going to benefit the citizens.
So in 2012, the building went up for foreclosure auction after it had been falling apart for some years.
Okay.
And they had built a building at the bottom of the hill. Mm-hmm. And they're not even on the same level. Because this mansion is up on a really high hill, mm-hmm. It overlooks the city.
Right.
And so where they built this like lower level, you can't even tell it's a completely different street. It's almost like a completely different neighborhood because it's so far down.
Right.
Apparently this woman named Rosaline Lyons purchased it because she wanted to make it a treatment center for addicts.
Ooh, that's a wonderful idea.
She purchased it for $1,500. She didn't realize that she had also purchased the mansion.
That's a little bit nutty.
Yeah. So for $1,500, she purchased this building at the bottom of the hill.
Right. On top of the mansion.
And without knowing, she purchased the Schofield mansion.
I could see how that happens.
And she didn't have money.
Oh.
She had $1,500.
Right, exactly.
But she didn't have money to keep it up.
I mean, with a mansion, yeah.
I mean, I could buy a $1,500 mansion, but how would I maintain it?
Yeah, right.
It costs a lot of money.
Well, I think the simple solution would be you put duct tape on it. And then it goes, see? Now it's back to the old days.
A duct tape mansion?
Oh, yeah, why not? I think that'd be cool.
It'd be like duct tape. Woo! You could have like a money pit. What is that? Like a money tower where you could swim through your coins?
Oh, yeah, right. Actually, supposedly I was dumb enough to believe that. You ever see the thing where someone dies into the whole bunch of coins and it goes like a pool?
Scrooge McDuck. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Turns out that's not how that works. It's more like as hard as the ground.
Do you think Scrooge McDuck would really break his neck?
Oh, he'd break everything. Like the coins are hard. I think we all know that. But when you have 1 million of them though lined up, it's like a hard road that cuts everything open.
I suppose he could have traded his coins in for dollar bills.
Or bonds.
Would it be any fun to dive into bonds?
I mean, I don't know. It'd be diving into Wall Street, I guess. No, there'd be, instead of the Wolf of Wall Street, it'd be the Duck of Wall Street. But anyway, it's kind of crazy to think that you can buy an entire property from the bottom to the top and for $1,500.
It's something that it could only happen in a neighborhood, like something in Cleveland. And I think that's what we'll find as we research this subject further. There's some really amazing stuff out there that somehow has just fallen through the cracks. So she didn't have money to maintain the house.
Right.
She didn't really have money to maintain the treatment center. Neither even got off the ground.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
And people didn't understand. People were angry. She was in charge of this mansion and it started falling apart under her watch.
Right.
And she didn't understand why everybody was so mad, apparently, according to these articles. She built up $55,000 worth of tax debt. She owed $55,000 on the property.
Right.
And she had no way to pay for them.
Oh, jeez.
Her intentions were good.
Right.
But she had no way to actually go through with the plan, apparently, according to these stories. So people got tired of seeing it falling apart, and they called, they almost called for her to sell it, which she ended up doing. And in return for her giving it away to the land bank, they did away with her $55,000 worth of.
Okay. Well, at least, at least that happened. At least that she didn't have to worry about the tax.
So one of the things that they've done, they've pretty much just put it on ice.
Right.
Actually, when I first moved to the city, there were no windows. There was just still trash in the yard. Now that I've actually gone back and looked into it and researched it a little more, it looks like the land bank actually got the property and they've kind of put it on ice. They found this like poly something window. I don't even want to try to pronounce poly whatever it is. It's a plastic window.
Oh, okay.
And apparently this window is something that they put into to old places that don't have enough money to run.
Oh.
But they don't want people breaking in.
Right.
And they don't want people breaking the windows, and they don't want people destroying the place. So they built a big fence around this building, and they put a bunch of plastic windows in it, and they've cleaned up the yard. According to the last article I saw, it's just on ice, waiting for somebody to
purchase it,
to go in and purchase it. I mean, it could be this glorious thing.
Oh, yeah.
However, it's in a very, very, very rough neighborhood.
Well, again, I think even with the notion of, it's in a bad neighborhood, I'm pretty sure the people around the neighborhood want to see that mansion be fixed, for sure.
Well, it would improve the neighborhood, too.
Oh, absolutely, improve the value. And I think that's why people are now coming in to buy properties in East Cleveland, because it's an opportunity. And so, of course, unfortunately, I guess in a way, just as everything in life has a birth and a death, everything comes in cycles, including opportunities. From destruction becomes a chance for something new. And so this could be a chance for the mansion to come back.
And one of the factors is the Opportunity Corridor. Do you know about that?
No, I don't.
I think we could probably do an entire episode on the Opportunity Corridor.
So later.
Or maybe half an episode.
Half an episode, okay.
But it goes from where 490 and 77 meet to 115th Street in near Case Western, near the Cleveland Clinic. And they think that once the Opportunity Corridor goes in,
right,
the neighborhood will improve.
Right.
And the Schofield Mansion is very close to the Opportunity Corridor. And so high hopes, but at least it's not deteriorating anymore.
Oh, for sure.
All right, you want to take a break?
Sure.
All right.
Hello, this is Fred, the Monster. Be sure to check out the episode notes for today's show. Go to the photo albums at Facebook.com/The Cleveland Podcast and find the album with the same name as this episode. We'll be sharing photos as well as any additional information that might be relevant to each new show. That way, you'll have something visual to reference as you listen and follow along. If you enjoy the show, be sure to like us and share. See you on the interwebs.
Like salad.
Oh, no, this has got to stop.
Oh, no, this is not stopping. I am persistent and frequent.
You just want me to answer the question.
No, I'm going to answer it. We have a correction to make.
Yeah.
We were talking about a poly something for the window. We have found the notes and we can now appropriately describe it. The windows that we were talking about regarding the Schofield Mansion that were a poly something are polycarbonates, which means multiple things of carbon, basically. I know things is not the best descriptor for such a term, but
poly means multiple.
Yeah, like mono means single. So I learned this all from chemistry.
Okay.
I used to think I would want to be a chemist, and then I took AP chemistry, and then we got into the darn carbonates. And man, I actually had a fear of rings for a period of time because carbon, there's a lot of shapes of like carbons in chemistry because you break down how the whole structure looks like when you put up the whole thing. So, a lot of carbons like carbon rings and like this is like an organic chemistry and stuff. I was so terrified because it's so many little things that you have to find and have to draw it all out. You have to know how the structures work. And from then on, I realized that I'm going to be no chemist.
Why not?
Because I was afraid of those carbon rings. I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it.
It's scary.
Oh, God. I think people will tell you. You ask a college student, do you like organic chemistry? 99.9% will go, I really didn't enjoy it. Or they go, I hate it.
Could you imagine being one of those scientists who wanted to find the God particle?
Oh, yeah. That would be interesting. But that's a little bit non to chemistry. That's like in the physics.
Well, what was that program called?
Oh, the Hadron Collider?
Yeah.
This huge, there's a crazy conspiracy theory that the Hadron Collider is supposed to summon an Egyptian god.
Right. Did it?
No.
No.
Of course not.
Maybe he did, and he was just really lame.
Oh, then who knows? But anyway, the Hadron Collider is like miles and miles of like just tubes and different types of really advanced technology that collide two different atoms / electrons / just particles. And the idea is to create like certain reactions, and you're trying to discover new particles or how particles interact with each other when sent in really high velocities.
But do you remember when they're like, hey, this might create a black hole?
Oh, that's right.
We don't think it's going to, but we're going to try it anyway.
Oh, no. It's like, let's know, a black hole of any size would pretty much destroy the Earth within a matter of seconds.
Actually, I think I was listening to something earlier this month where it said a black hole could exist and then just like and just like cease to exist like within seconds.
The concept of a black hole and how it works is because everything has a mass, right?
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, mass is like kind of like weight, but it's really like the I think it's the space an object kind of like in total occupies or something of that nature. I'm pretty sure I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure it could be. I'm like 50-50 on that, but pretty much mass is like. Things like kilograms, grams, that would be what mass is.
Well, I've had jobs where I published like a paper or a graphic design work, and it went to like thousands of people, and I made a spelling error. Yeah. I was really embarrassed by that. But could you imagine being the guy who has to decide, oh, this might create a black hole?
Oh, yeah. Let's see. John, let's talk about the black hole that you created last week. Okay, it was one time. No, we have to fire you.
I don't think anybody's talking about the black hole that anybody created.
Yeah, because they'd be dead.
Right.
But anyway, we're going from one abandoned building to another. What's the next one? It's easy.
So I was visiting a neighborhood here in Cleveland, and I looked up to my left as I was driving up this road. Taylor Road, I think it was.
Okay. Well, North Taylor, South Taylor?
I think it would have been North Taylor.
Okay.
East Cleveland. Again, a very rough neighborhood. I look up the hill and I see this green dome, and it's falling apart. And I'm like, what is that? It was almost the same feeling when I saw the Schofield Mansion. What is that, and why is it doing here, and why is it falling apart? So, of course, I looked it up, too. It was built in 1894, and it was called the Warner and Swayze Observatory. And
like Patrick Swayze?
Yes. She's like the wind.
Oh, no.
To my tree.
Patrick Swayze was so badass that he created an observatory in 1894. He can time travel. Basically, a competitor to Chuck Norris.
She's like the telescope to East Cleveland.
Oh, no.
No?
No, let's not do that. Well, what about the observatory? What'd you find?
Well, one of the people who listened to our podcast texted me and said, "Stop singing, please." Anyways, this was built in 1894 and had a 9.5-inch telescope at the time. And there was just one dome at first. And then they built a second dome in 1941 with a 24-inch telescope. They found out some very important things there. They found out that the Milky Way was a spiral.
Really?
Yeah. And they also found out that red giants tend to be in the center of galaxies.
Really? I didn't know that.
So it's a very important...
What's a red giant? I'll explain it.
Okay.
This is the nerdy side of me. A red giant is pretty much like a star. So we have like a regular star, and kind of like, I guess I can't remember the exact qualification of the sun, but a star has like a birth and then like a death, right? So the beginning of a star is formed in a supernova, And then these are not like stars that last 90 years. We're talking about billions upon billions of years for some stars. And then for others, it could be millions. It just depends on the star. And so the star kind of just, it exists and it gives off all this energy. And so that's why you can see stars in the night sky, because there's so much energy coming off of them that's kind of creating this light. And what happens is sometimes over time the star loses energy, and I can't explain the exact phenomenon, but the star gets bigger, right? So it gets more massive, and so that's where a red giant is. So basically, a red giant's like near kind of this phase of it's just a phase of a star almost.
So they kept going until about the 1950s, and at that point, there became a lot of light pollution in the city.
Right.
That's probably I'm assuming that's probably when they started installing streetlights.
Right.
At that point in history, having a observatory in the middle of a city was no longer a viable thing to do.
Right.
But it didn't shut down until 1982.
Oh, that's a good almost 100 years.
The original telescope was moved to the A.W. Smith building, very close to where we are here at Case Western. And apparently there's a dome on top of one of the buildings.
Right.
And that original telescope is here on campus still.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In 2005, a couple bought it and wanted to fix it up and make it their house. In 2007, the male of that couple was imprisoned for mortgage fraud.
Oh, great.
So I think we kind of see like a commonality here, right?
I guess.
I think people buy these houses that shouldn't buy them.
Like the recession, where everyone's buying houses that they can't afford, then lo and behold, they have default on the loan.
And then suddenly, it falls apart.
Right. But wouldn't that be funny, though? The couple goes, baby, I like to observe you all day long. You're my red giant in my universe. You make me go supernova.
Right. You want to buy an observatory together and make love under the stars, even though there's light pollution.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
So romantic.
Oh, dear.
Which leads us to the Warner and Swayze Company. The same people who built this observation deck. Mm-hmm. On 5701 Carnegie, it's dilapidated as well, and it shut down in 1985. It made parts for war in World War I and World War II.
Well, that would make sense.
And at one point, they were one of the major employers in the city of Cleveland.
Wow, really?
I think it's right by the train bridge. I think near 55th.
Okay.
Somewhere around there.
Uh-huh.
It's a 5-story building, and it's gigantic. But some people like to explore it still.
Think they can find some ghosts?
Possibly. Actually, that was one of the things about the Schofield Mansion. They said it was haunted.
I'm not surprised. Seems like anything that's abandoned, you go, well, that's haunted. You just go, oh no, that's just a squatter. That ghost is just a squatter that rightfully goes, get out of my house.
Maybe it was Smelly Moldy Ghost.
Oh gosh.
Remember him?
Yeah, right. What's that smell? Why is it so moldy? I feel like I've got mold on my arm. We gotta get out. And someone posted on YouTube, crazy exploration in the Warner and the Warner building gone wrong at 3 a.m.
I think at their peak, they had about 7,000 employees. And it was a place in Cleveland where a lot of people found employment. Now it's just an eyesore almost.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
And it's not one of those things you want to tear down. It's one of those things you want to see somebody
rebuild.
It's
a historical building. It was one of the big employers of Clevelanders around in the 20th century and a major force in World War II. I mean, you might want to keep it. You might.
But you kind of see this common downturn in all these stories, right?
Oh, of course. I mean, we have to think about that. This is Cleveland in a post-industrial time,
right?
Which means that when you have companies that go, okay, we're going to move our manufacturing into other countries because it's cheaper and there's not maybe necessarily as many rules to abide to. Suddenly, you're going to lose a lot of jobs. The building's left abandoned, and then it falls apart. And the major cities like Cleveland, Baltimore, Detroit, these cities, and amongst others, they start to fall apart. And so, you have quite a few Midwestern cities that go through this problem of like the 50s or like the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and they pull out, and even into the 90s and 2000s, they pull out because they go, well, this is a couple $1 million cheaper over here, and now you lose all the jobs, people move out, and suddenly the building begins to fall apart. And so once great companies that were employing so many people in a city, gone.
There's not money to fix all of this stuff.
Unfortunately not.
There's a lot of bad neighborhoods and a lot of stuff falling apart.
Well, again, it's the idea that we're keeping it that really can provide as a launch pad towards some type of educational opportunity, because if the building's demolished, who's going to know about it?
It's gone.
It's gone.
So much history's gone.
Exactly.
Like, we don't want history to go away.
Exactly. Like, so many great historical monuments have been buried. Some have been buried in mud, like the city of Pompeii,
Right.
where the volcano explodes and Mount Vesuvius, and all the people get literally encased in ash. You even could see it when you go through Pompeii. You see some of the glass cases with some actual bodies encased in this ash, and everything solidifying. It looks like a full body cast. But Pompeii was actually buried in meters of mud, and it took hundreds of years, over 1,000 years, because it was buried in around the time of like the first century AD, and then it was uncovered in the mid 18th century, and then there were numerous excavations up until about the late 19th, early 20th century. Historical buildings can still be found in this case, but so many are put under so many bad conditions until they're fixed. It's a lot of taking for granted, but it's also just resources not being there.
There's no money to fix this stuff. As we were talking about with the tax on the gas, I'm not a big fan of our prices going up. I don't want to spend 10 cents more per gallon on gas. We don't want to lose that money.
No.
But the next place we're going to talk about is quite possibly has probably one of the worst streets in all of Cleveland and all of Northeast Ohio. It has potholes that are so big that you have to drive like maybe a mile per hour to get through it, it would destroy your car.
What road is this?
Terrace Road in East Cleveland.
Actually, I drove right near that on the Uber, and turns out that road is closed. It's actually shut off because the driver even mentioned there are too many darn potholes.
Yeah, it'll destroy your car.
Yeah, but apparently the city of East Cleveland closes down certain roads when there's too many potholes because they just need time to do it and they just don't have the money. So, it makes sense, honestly. But I did not know. That particular road I do know about. It's infamy for its potholes. But it does make it great, though, for trying to play hide and seek.
In the potholes?
Oh, yeah. Peekaboo.
If you're a mud monster, that's...
It's perfect.
Yeah. So that apartment building was 13 stories tall. It still is 13 stories tall. But it had, at one time, 250 or more units in it,
right.
where people lived. So, the people who lived there weren't the wealthiest.
They were just trying to get by.
Right. It seems like nobody wants to talk about this.
Really?
Like, when you look at articles, like people call the mayor of East Cleveland and he doesn't seem to want to talk about it.
Must be a little bit of something of shame of some sort.
And then they call
secret.
And then they call the management. They call the owners. Nobody wants to talk. There's like $2 million worth of taxes owed on it.
$2 million.
But the company who owned it went bankrupt.
And we thought $55,000 was bad.
Right.
Jeez, $2 million.
So you notice a theme.
They can't afford it.
Right.
Or they default on it.
Somebody bailed.
Yeah, I mean, so much of it. Like the whole realm of bankruptcy is often many people declare bankruptcy, or not many, not most, but a good amount of those who declare bankruptcy, that, for instance, they actually are not broke. They just want to clear out some debts and just start fresh.
I was actually wrong. I just looked. It was $1 million in back taxes owed, and it would cost $2 million to demolish it.
Oh, still $1 million is a lot, but $2 million to demolish it. Well,
so we're talking about $3 million lost.
Jeez, that's.
I mean, if you wanted to tear it down,
right?
That's a bad situation.
Yeah,
there's just litter everywhere. People dump things in it. Apparently, I think it's relatively recently that they shut it down. I think it was in 2014, where they declared it unsafe to live in, at which point most of the residents had already moved out.
Right.
There was garbage piling up.
Jeez.
And there was mold.
Oh, God.
And I think at the end there were like 10 people living there.
Only 10. Wow.
From some of the articles that I read.
Well, this shows that sometimes with these property managers, you need to have a good property manager, one that cares about his residents no matter what type of economic situation they're in. Like, I know a friend of my family used to run Section 8 housing, and so he was talking about this, and he often mentions that for advice when it comes to Section 8 is you need to really keep upkeep with it, because there's a lot of damage being done to it because so many people move in and out. It's really quick. You know, people are there for a little while, then they're gone. So so you have to really keep up with it. And when you don't, because you go, oh, it's Section 8, you know, it's fine. We just need to keep it like barely manageable. This is what happens. You have entire buildings of 13 stories, and then people don't have access to housing, and then they have to make dramatic decisions that may not turn out so great. So now all of a sudden, because of bad property management, we have a situation like this with Huron. Think about 13 floors of apartments. If they were kept well, do you know how many additional residents there'd be? More money coming to the city for people working jobs. Like, that would be a good thing.
It's a problem that just builds upon itself.
Yeah, but again, property managers, gotta know your stuff.
Right. And I think a lot of these people just don't care.
Oh, they don't, because they go, oh, it's Section 8, you know. Even though these are all still human beings that deserve decency, but they go, well, they get cockroaches, whatever, it's Section 8,
like,
right?
What are you going to do about it almost, you know?
Right, it's like this stigma of like, it's weird that, you know, somehow the more expensive the apartment, the people go, oh, we got to take care of it, you know. But then you get down to the lowest of the low, not the lowest of the low, but Section 8, where, you know, this is meant to assist people and get up more on their feet.
The people who have the most difficult time.
Right. Like, if you're a mother of 4 kids with a secretarial job that pays well, but you got 4 kids, there's a chance you might be in Section 8. It depends.
There's a series of buildings there filled with people who are elderly.
Exactly. And you just go, well, mold? Nah, don't worry about it. But these are people that could die of this. And
Right.
They go, well, as long as the building's upstanding and just standing there, we're doing just fine. You know, it's just ridiculous. It's starting to make my blood boil.
Oh, right. Such a difficult situation. When there's nobody with any money to fix the problem.
Right.
It's something that has to be solved.
Right. And the crazy thing is, you know, when you think about it, is if you can pool money from the community in some shape or form, even if it's just $1, and some people can't even afford $1, even 50 cents. If you get all the residents together, you know, that could be an opportunity. You get people from from other neighborhoods. They come in, they contribute, of course, to this campaign. Then the city can do things that could really help with fixing those buildings. Now, of course, it's much more complicated than that, but at the same time, this shows you that there are many issues that come with when a company is not ready to run a complex that big.
Right.
Or just any building. Because we've seen multiple companies that have defaulted and then things fall apart. When companies get greedy and they just go, well, if we just keep things slightly under standard, we'll be fine. But then the building falls apart, and then for some companies, it's just about the bottom line. And then it leaves so many people in the city without work, without a home. But it'll just go, but we got out of $2 million of debt. We got out of $1 million in taxes.
We need to start having more fun episodes.
I know, we do. We're just getting all, but again, it's frustrating.
I think our next episode's going to be a fun one.
Yes, for sure.
I hope.
Oh, I think it will be.
We need to make it that way. More positivity.
More positivity.
Less negativity.
Yeah, well.
Less focused on the bad things and more focused on how great of a city this is.
But again, the abandoned buildings all have history. That's the positive of all this, is that all these buildings hold substantial value. But the hard part is when people mismanage it and they do stupid stuff with how when they have assumptions about the buildings and the people that work inside or live in the building, and it just leads to results like this.
Right.
But those buildings are still there to be fixed,
Right.
or at least have like the opportunity to build something new. The people, and because these buildings, though, the residents around, they get a bad name, and it's unfair, it's unjust. But that's why, in a way, that it's an opportunity for growth, and I think so many residents want to see that, both within that side of Cleveland and well outside of it as well, to the other suburbs of Cleveland, going west, south, and further east.
I just personally, I see these buildings and I think, oh, it takes me back to something that I've never experienced. But it takes me back to a glorious time
Right.
of yesteryear.
Well, I mean, we always see the past in rose-tinted glasses, I suppose.
Right.
But at the same time, these are lessons that we can learn.
I imagine a mansion on the hill overlooking a reservoir.
Must have been great. But think about it. You could make museums in some of these buildings, like the observatory, like the business building around the bridge on 55th, like the mansion.
Right.
You can create museums that teach people about what wonderful things have come through.
Right.
And the history behind these buildings. Because if people just look at abandoned buildings, they just go, well, we're just going to tear it down. Or we got to tear it down. But if they don't understand the historical significance of it, we lose track of history. And if we don't learn from history, we're just going to repeat the same problem. So if the Huron gets knocked over and we don't know the whole story about Huron in that apartment complex, another Huron will emerge and it will be repeated, inevitably. If we don't learn from history, we're just doomed to repeat it, as the famous quote often says. And this happens again and again. We've seen so many apartment buildings rise and fall because of bad management, and so many great buildings rise and fall because of bad management. If we don't allow the opportunity for people to see all the history, the positives and some of the downsides for these buildings, these downturns, then people are just going to not understand why it's important to keep these buildings around, or at least to have some type of memorabilia that allows people to remember the significance of those buildings, and then we can evolve as citizens in Cleveland.
All right. And this is our episode on abandoned buildings. Later. Smack.
Right. No more singing. Ugh.